No, this is the brackets. These are the brackets. More than 100 lessons. Just double brackets. Now, if you're doing 300, try it.
We could just double up for the week.
You know, we don't have, on the 18th.
That's wrong. Yeah, that's wrong too.
All right, let's coffee sometime. Let's have coffee. Can we get some coffee? Can we get some coffee, buddy?
11.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
They had 2 stalls.
Hey, Rob, you're looking for your glasses, aren't you, Tom?
Yeah. I only need them to read.
One up there, one in here, and one on my eyes. That's crazy.
I'm the office, he might forget.
Pat's gonna go check his order right now. But yeah, I'm thinking we just double up on the 11th, 18th.
I did that lunchtime.
Which time we do?
Council.
Yeah. So it is like do that. It's just like different areas, but we were gone this weekend. Oh, this is tired. Yeah. Yeah. So fun.
Let's see what we got.
Oh yeah. So fun. 1 second.
Do we have?
Okay. All right, I would have passed this thing.
Okay.
Outdoors, I need to wait. Laura and I were going to work on the exempt ordinance. But I got police cruisers that need to do in paving.
Yes. So it should be.
I'd like to get this out so that on the 11th, we can vote on it.
He's like 74 now.
Get the price out for the paving.
Okay. The paving and police cruisers, so we have to have it. Just have to figure out who's gonna chair that meeting.
We have Tuesday, or do we have to have Monday?
I'm not here Tuesday either.
We're both gone Tuesday.
Okay. Well, do we need, what, 4 votes?
Coming out of committee, you don't need.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You're not voting on
It's
this.
just committee meeting.
It's just a committee meeting,
Yeah, this
right?
is committee. Okay.
Just run your committee.
Yeah, so we're good.
Thanks, Pat.
Okay, we ready? Okay, I'd like to call to order the council meeting Monday, January 28th, 7 p.m. Opening prayer. We have Reverend here. No? Mark, would you like to lead us, please? Sure.
Lord, thank you for bringing us here this evening. Thank you for giving us the honor and responsibility to make some decisions to help our community be a better place to live, learn, work, and play. We thank you for giving us everything that we have to this point. We've been so blessed. Help us to maintain that and make it even better for people. Give us the courage, the determination, and the compassion to make some really good decisions here and listen to the people that are part of our community so we can go forward and make the right decision. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Tim, you call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Member Kiesling.
Here.
Member Revolt.
Here.
Member Soretta.
Here.
Member Fonte.
Here.
Member Warren.
Here.
Member Peters.
Here.
Member Foltz.
Here.
7 in attendance.
All right, thank you. And before we get into recognition of visitors, can I have a motion, a second, to amend our agenda to allow Treasurer Zumbar to address council?
So moved. Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Zumbar, floor is yours. Welcome.
Mr. President, members of council, members of administration, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here today to speak to you about a program that's going to be launched this April in the Treasurer's office. It's called the Fix-It Fund Home Improvement Program. You have a brochure that has been passed out by Deputy Treasurer Jim Wallace from my office, who will be running this program. There are 3 banks that will be partnering with the Treasurer's office with this particular Fix-It Fund program. They are First Commonwealth, Westfield, and Farmers National Bank. The Fix-It Fund program has been authorized by the county commissioners, and it is in conjunction with our depository agreements with these 3 banks. The banks, based upon your initial qualifying with the Treasurer's office, there are 2 qualifying aspects. You must, number 1, be current with your real estate taxes. The second qualifier is that your property, building value only, according to the Stark County Auditor's valuation, must be at least less than $250,000 in value. That basically is about 96%, a little over 96% of the homeowners in Stark County. So a lot of folks can qualify for this program. What does it really mean for you? Well, there are loans that will be made available through these banks because they are a recognized depository with the Treasurer's office here in Stark County. They are authorized to issue loans from $5,000 to $50,000. These loans are for projects in your home, such as remodeling a kitchen or redoing your windows, an attic, a fireplace, you name it. But there are some loans that you would not be allowed to qualify for in terms of the project. Project cannot be used for a swimming pool. So Mr. Revolt, you cannot add that swimming pool to your property. You can't add a dish onto the home as well, so, or a hot tub. So sorry, Doug, that's out for you.
Nice try, though. Nice try.
The person's credit worthiness is really what's going to drive this program in terms of them obtaining the loan. So once they apply with the bank, and if the bank goes through their credit score and they're approved, and depending on that credit score, they could receive up to 2% off of the fixed rate mortgage. So it is something that can help out that homeowner do a project with their home, and they could benefit by the fact that they could get up to 2% off that rate. With that being said, that pretty much is the program in a nutshell. Mr. Wallace's information is on the back side in terms of contacting him. There will be an application that he will then have. You can get the application at one of the 3 banks, and I have got their contact information inside the brochure and the contact phone numbers and emails. Or the person can stop off at the bank branch and inquire about it, which they should be directed to speak to that particular identified agent for the bank that's going to be working with our office with this program. Yes, sir.
First of all, it's welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be home.
Good to have you here. I've got 2 questions for you. I notice that the brochure does not indicate the term of the loan. What would be the typical term on one of these?
That is worked out between the homeowner and the bank.
Is there a prepayment penalty that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, but that would again be
Worked out with the bank.
Okay, very good. Is the interest paid on this loan tax deductible?
My question.
It's a great question. I do not know the answer to that, but I would recommend you speak with your accountant.
I guess my question would be, under the federal tax code, does this kind of loan, does it dovetail with something like a home equity line of credit or something which are tax deductible or were?
Again, my understanding is it would be a fixed rate loan with the bank, and in that case, you could speak with, obviously, the bank agent about that particular question. I do not know the answer.
Yeah, my guess is, in some ways, this would be sort of a reconfigured home equity line of credit, because there's going to be some collateral involved. And again, but the advantage is it's the 2% below the rate.
That is the hook, right?
It is indeed. It's an attractive feature.
Well, it's a win-win-win around when you look at it for Stark County. The homeowner wins because they potentially get up to 2% off the going rate. Stark County wins because we see the increase in the value for the property. In terms of local contractors and local vendors, they win because they are now perhaps getting the work. And of course, the material is bought here in Stark County, hopefully, so we're keeping the money locally.
In terms of marketing, you were doing that through press releases and through appearances
Yes,
like this one tonight.
correct.
But you don't anticipate doing any targeted direct mail or?
I do not anticipate a direct mail event happening. That's why we're going around to each village, municipality, and township in Stark County. We have, I've been taped for one of the cable programs, so that'll be airing in that particular community. I expect to do the same with Massillon Cable TV as well, and any radio or any other venue that would have me come and talk about the program. And of course, if you, council members or the administration, have a meeting where you are talking about economic development projects or something, and you would like me to speak at that particular evening, I'd be happy to come back and make arrangements to make myself available to talk about the program. It does launch in April of this year. We expect it to run through July, and that is the window of time that these folks would have to fill out the application, go through the qualifying process, and then eventually either get approved by the bank for the loan or find out that they don't qualify for the project, or the project doesn't qualify for the loan, or they don't qualify for the reduced rate, but perhaps the bank can offer them something different. At the end of the day, this is to help fix up the properties in Stark County. This program was modeled on the program run in Medina County by Treasurer John Burke. He did his 20 years ago. To date, he has actually loaned out over $13.3 million and has helped out over 930-some homes in Medina County.
Good record. Will the banks be offering any counseling to potential borrowers regarding the business relationship with a contractor? Are they going to give them any advice? You know, I would envision that some people may have no experience, not know how to set up a contract, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the bank is definitely going to be looking at the qualified contractor, number one, because they're going to have estimates provided.
Okay.
That's how they know how much of a loan they're going to need to borrow, and also they have to hit that minimum threshold of $5,000. Has to be $5,000 or greater and up to $50,000.
Well, I know typically when the federal government inserts restoration money after a hurricane, one of the typical problems is contractor fraud. So, just
This is all
curious.
through the bank, believe it or not. We are the initial starting point.
Okay.
And we, like I said, there's the two qualifiers from the Treasurer's Office. You must be current on your real estate taxes, and the value, according to the Stark County Auditor's Office, is at less than $250,000 in value. Those are the qualifiers from us. Other than that, there is no income qualifier, so it doesn't matter how much you make. That is going to actually help out a lot of folks in Stark County because CDBG loans have a minimum $40,000 threshold.
Hey, Alex, is there some kind of information or even a link we can put on our Facebook? You know, Kathy, maybe you can send something over to Kathy and we can put it on our Facebook.
It's actually on our website, on the Stark County Treasurer's Office. If you look on the left side.
That's it? I mean, we just put that on there, but if there's, okay.
Yep. And then Mr. Wallace's contact information is there as well. He is really one of the starting points. Remember
Dominic.
Fonte?
I was going to say this is really great, so I'm glad you guys are stepping up as a community because this affects everybody. And we know real estate's important because every improvement stimulates all the local contractors, stores, and so forth. My guess is this is probably strictly owner-occupied only.
It's owner-occupied and multifamily is also in there. Multifamily dwellings with a home value, again, not including the land, $250,000.
So we don't know if it's all properties or just owner-occupied at
It's
this point.
got to be owner-occupied
Okay.
because, again, you have to be current on your real estate taxes.
Got it.
That's what we check.
You know,
And
this is great. Thank you for sharing.
you're welcome. Anyone else?
Mr. Zumbart?
Yes, sir.
In the brochure, when it talks about a limited amount of funding is available, what is the nature of that?
The funding that I have with these three banks is $5 million amongst all three of them. And basically, the first come, first serve is once we reach the maximum amount that was able to be loaned out, then the program at that point in time stops for that particular year, and the projects then are begun for the folks that qualify, and as those projects are completed and the money's paid back, then it can free up the money to be loaned out again.
So is the county loaning the money, or is it the
No,
banks?
it's the bank. My money is basically invested. I am actually going to be not earning the total amount of interest income.
I see.
That's how the link deposit program works with this particular program. The state of Ohio has it's the same program. I'm just making a smaller thumbprint, basically.
Very good service.
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right, good stuff.
Good stuff, Alex.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and enjoy your meeting.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, at this time, if you wish to address council, please step forward, state your name and address, please.
Larry Tripp, 1127 East Maple, North Canton. Folks, when does this nonsense stop? When does this council begin to show some professionalism and some accountability? This nonsense won't end until council terminates the duties of the law director and accepts the resignation of council president. Why do I stand here holding pages of transcript from the meeting of January 14, 2019, as received from the law director without first being approved by the council? Why do I look at the February schedule and see a meeting scheduled for February 18, 2019, when government offices are closed for President's Day? Why do I stand here wearing a hat during a meeting which would symbolize to me disrespect? I'll tell you that later. Why do I read legislation for Ordinance 3-2019 pertaining to Main Street Business District and think, what a shoddy piece of legislation? Why do I recall incidents from 2 weeks ago in which council president showed complete disrespect for rules of decorum, courtesy, and propriety? Do any of you here have any respect for the positions entrusted to you by the voting citizens? Do any of you, obviously not. Do any of you read legislation? Do any of you really care about the quality of leadership within city council? Obviously not, or you wouldn't have let the law director council form of government led by an inept council president exist for the past 5.5 years. Unfortunately, time does not permit me to go into more detail, but let me briefly touch on my beginning remarks of whys. Issuing minutes without first being approved tell me the law director believes he runs council, will do things his way, when and where he wants to. Council President, you and a couple other council members are being led on a leash and you don't know it. Errors on tonight's agenda tell me he is incapable of the council clerk's position, much less that of the law director. Why did I wear a hat as I came forward to speak? Merely to illustrate the character of our council president, and even tonight, when he wears his cap during the 2 meetings 2 weeks ago. Rude, yes. Unprofessional, yes. Lack of class, yes. Meeting with these gentlemen, hats on. Really unprofessional. Don't expect to look or see his actions on the video from the city website, because you won't find it. Our acting council clerk couldn't run the video machine, so you won't get to see it. Briefly, Ordinance 3-2019. Are you talking of a Main Street business district or a Main Street business? And now on tonight's agenda, Main Street district, and then in parentheses, MSB. What goes there? What goes? Now you're looking at your agendas. You haven't read your literature before. Then you have a sentence in the legislation which reads, whereas the city wishes to implement the MSB to promote the central portion of Main Street as a core area for retail sales. If that is the intent, why not the northern boundary from Apple Grove to perhaps East Hill? As it stands right now, you really have a shoddy piece of legislation. And I would suggest you table it tonight and revisit it in committee and another meeting of the whole. If you have any questions regarding what I'm saying, please ask me. Again, time does not permit me to discuss Mr. Osborne's eviction 2 weeks ago unless council permits me to extend the 5-minute speaking rule, which I'm sure they won't. So, council, you have choices to take, some action, or continue to get nothing. You have created a monster affecting the professionalism, integrity, and leadership for North Canton City government. And now it's time to get it right. It's starting to reflect on each and every one of you and on the citizens of North Canton.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to address council, please step forward, state your name and address.
This keeps getting pushed back further and further every week. Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. As you're very well, I've been against this Main Street Business District from day one, through all the screw-ups and revisiting and all that. Rather than just be negative about it, I'm going to offer another option for you. And I don't know why we haven't thought about it. Because the Main Street Business District, for the most part, from north to south Main Street, we have viable, economically beneficial activity going on at various levels, but we do. There's a handful, maybe 8, 10 properties that will never be of much benefit and will continue to decline. This is as much for Mr. Diorio, the administration, and I just know it's our mayor's not here. I don't know where he's at.
Family commitment.
I'm sorry?
He had a family commitment.
We have almost $1 million in our CIC. Why don't we go up there and buy these century-old homes sitting on these 10th-acre lots and clear these lots? Prepare them for development. Prepare them for interested buyers who have a plan, but as they travel up and down Main Street, they see no place to implement their plan. These properties, as they are, should not go for a huge price. For many of them, the demolition costs would exceed the value of the whole property. So, you've been sitting on this $1 million since I think it was passed back in like 08 or something. That's where you could make things happen. Clear these properties. Replat them into something, or just wait till something comes along and somebody says, hey, there's a good location for me to maybe do something. Because then you can instantly see the value of that property for whatever need they would have. The width, the depth. They could configure whatever they want to build. You could see it, how it would work for them. Forget this Main Street Business District. It has no value for 99% of all of Main Street. I don't know why you earmarked it from Orion all the way down to Everhard Road. Drive it yourself and look along there. You have funeral parlors. You have all kinds of business. You have large businesses, small businesses. Clear these old houses out and make Main Street more attractive to new business that would come. Now, I mentioned a couple weeks ago, which got me thrown out of here, Mr. Revolt is a big, I guess, promoter of let's plan for economic development. And I just wanted to mention, well, you've had Waterside sitting down there for 10 years. So I was just hoping maybe you would speak to that. But instead, it's out the door. You had nearly an hour break between meetings, and you still wouldn't let me come back in. So if you really believe in what you're saying, Mr. Revolt, you would stop this Main Street business zoning district, which continues to water down and compromise our existing code, and embrace buying these properties, clearing them up. Let the city be a player in its own economic development. Does that sound like a good idea, Mrs. Keesley? You're the chairman of economic development. Mr. Revolt? Nobody?
Mr. Peters? It's not back and forth. We're listening to your comments.
You pick and choose who you're going to let have back and forth, Mr. Peters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to address council, please step forward, state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Joseph Mulqueen, and I live at 1016 Park Avenue, Northeast, North Canton. And I always read these, and I saw how cool it was. AAP's giving us a $30,000 grant for Dogwood Park, and I was just wondering what's gonna happen with the whole park, because I don't know, I've been I always see ways how we could fix up Dogwood Park, because I've spent a good portion of my life there, and I see maybe we can take the woods and turn that into a little mountain bike trail, and the playground obviously needs fixed up, and it's amazing the skate park's been there for 17 years, and sadly concrete doesn't last forever, winter and whatnot, and there's just some things there that need you can take some quickcrete and patch in the little cracks or whatever, or if there's enough funding to repave the place again. But I'm just here to brainstorm and figure out how we can create funding, even more funding for Dogwood Park, and and what ways we can fix up Dogwood, because there's it's a nice chunk of land there, and it's we can do something better. I don't know, the pavilion's kind of outdated there, and it's just the shelter's nice and fixed up, and it's just I don't know, I just think it'd be nice to give the next generation an even better park than what we all grew up with, because I've been there since 2002, and this year I'm like, holy, it's 17 years, it's can't believe it, because the skate park in 9th Street just got fixed up, but that was always shut down forever, and the poor location doesn't help. But I guess this is where I'm at, where like we're North Canton, it's time for us to step it up. If Canton's gonna build a skate park, I think we can do better than Canton, but that's just I've always the motto here has always been we strive for excellence, whatnot, etc. And I just think our professionalism is a little bit better here in North Canton than Canton, and overall I just think we can step it up and get Dogwood an even better park than what it is. And, that being said, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. M-U-L-Q-U-E-E-N.
Joe, you want to hang around afterwards, and you'll get a good answer for that.
We'll fill you in on what's going on over there.
Okay, anyone else wish to address council? Please step forward. Yes, sir.
Bill Nepp, 519 Backwell Street, Southeast. I just want to say kudos to the street department for the work they've been doing for the last couple times of these storms we have coming up, and what's coming up pretty soon. These guys do a great job. I see them going down the street, constantly keeping the streets clean. to the sidewalks, it's hard to keep the sidewalks clean sometimes. I understand that, we gotta keep the streets clean, but, a lot of us try to do our best to keep the sidewalks cleaned up for the little guys to go to school. And, I just wanna say, thanks to the street department for the work that they do. Now, another subject I want to bring up is the safety center. I hope you all haven't forgot about it. This is something that we talked about 20-plus years ago, and I do know there's some people on council that were involved in some meetings that I was with a couple of years ago, and Mr. DiOrio was doing an excellent job in what he's pursuing this. And I just want to say that I just don't want this to die. This is something that's desperately needed. I think when I understand they're going through some plans now and everything, and I think once we see concrete evidence of what the building's going to look like, I think we'll be all appreciative of the new building. Now, one other point I want to bring up about that is the Hoover Company people have given us this land. I did give Mr. DiOrio some paperwork from the Hoover Company back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was even on the committee myself for the hazard material stuff that was in that area. I have to say that I am not really gung-ho about building that building at that particular position because of the hazard material stuff. I do realize and I do understand that we can do things to eliminate the hazards there. I do have a friend of mine who used to be a vice president of Hoover EPA, and I've talked to him about it, and he feels that there's a real good chance we can do this and cover the area. But that's not to say what can happen if we build a building there 20 years from now. There was a lot of the Hoover Company volunteered to do a lot of work there to make it safe for everybody. And I appreciate that, what they did. And Mr. Revolt was on that committee too, I believe, at that time. And they went out of their way to try to correct the situation within the city. And so even though we have a fire station right now that's sitting in a hazard area, I just don't really, I'm not really for the area there where they want to build this. It just seems kind of fishy to me that they want to give us this particular part of the land and where it's at, and knowing what we got there. Having worked there at Hoover's, I do know about some of the hazard stuff that they did have around there. But I wasn't around there, I wasn't even born yet when they were putting some of that stuff around there. So, I don't know what's in there. I know EPA approved it, said it was okay for us to do what we had to do there. But I just want to give my 2 cents about that. I'm not really in favor of that area. I think we can do, I know there's other areas that we can go to, maybe, and we'll see what happens. But I know initially we were going to build a building right out on the Main Street, on North Main Street, be on the east side. It would be coming more east where the present location that they're talking about. And so I'm just throwing that out there. So thanks.
Thank you, Bill.
Excuse me, can I get your name again, please? Spell your last name.
K-N-E-P-P.
And the street you live on?
Backwell Street, 519 Backwell Street, B-A-C-H-T-E-L.
Thank you, Bill. Okay. Anyone else? Going once? Okay. On to new business. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, ordinance 1-19?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Tim, please read.
Yes, sir. An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton, Ohio, to enter into a successor collective bargaining agreement between the city and the North Canton Professional Firefighter and Paramedic Association, IAFF, Local 3489, regarding State Employment Relations Board, case number 2018 MED-10-1146, and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Okay, Pat and Laura presented this at the committee meeting. Pretty straightforward. Any last questions for either one of them before we move forward? Time is of the essence, so it is under an emergency clause.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? 7 in favor. All right, may I have a motion and a second to suspend rules of council for 3 readings, ordinance number 1-19?
So moved.
Second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? 7 in favor. And then finally, a motion and a second to adopt under suspension of the rules, ordinance 1-19.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Next, motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, ordinance number 2-19.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Tim?
An ordinance amending Chapter 139, Department of Engineering of the City of North Canton's codified ordinances, specifically Section 139.03, Division of Permits and Inspection, to describe the restructuring of the Department of Engineering.
Thank you. Chairman Revolt.
Yes, this particular ordinance changes the report for permits from the city engineer to the director of administration. And in light of our contract, I think makes for expedited management, clear line of responsibility. This came at the administration's request. What I would propose, I think, first of all, I want to point out, if council looks at the initial paragraph of this ordinance, the director of law made a good catch. He neutralized the gender language in the proposed ordinance, where it said superintendent permits and inspection shall perform. The original was he, so that's been corrected. However, if you come down to section 1, you'll notice that in the document we're adopting tonight, we did have city engineer in there. And then it says director of administration. So what I'd propose that we do is amend this to strike that, so we're absolutely certain that it's out of the ordinance, it's clean, and it says that in section 1, that the report shall be accountable to the director of administration. I think for the draft it was fine, but I think we want a clean, I prefer a clean one.
I'll second
Clean
that
ordinance.
amendment.
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We are striking city engineer, section 1, second paragraph.
Yes. So I would move that we adopt the first reading of ordinance 2-2019 as amended.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. All right, motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, resolution number 1-19.
So moved.
Second.
A resolution pursuant to North Canton Codified Ordinance 1181.04, requesting the Planning Commission review, consider, and recommend or not recommend council's proposal to amend section 1171.02, Superintendent of Permits and Inspections of the City of North Canton's Codified Ordinances, to replace the superintendent's reporting official from the city engineer to the director of administration.
Thank you. Chairwoman Keesling.
Yes, I also need to make an amendment. I actually pulled out my zoning ordinance book, and in the title and in the actual part of the legislation, very first sentence, resolution pursuant to codified ordinance, it's actually ordinance section 1181-4.04. So we need to change it in the title, we need to change it or add it, I guess, in the first paragraph on the actual resolution. resolution, and then in section 1 of the actual resolution, add section 1181.04.
You're simply adding the word section?
Yeah,
in
that's all
between?
we're doing, right?
And
Because I
then-
went back and looked, and it's chapter 1181, then that actual ordinance is section 1181.04.
Correct. You, because it's a non-substantive change, you can make that type of amendment without,
Worrying about it.
yes.
Okay, that's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We're adding section prior to 1181.04.
And then this just piggybacks to Daryl's last ordinance where the superintendent is going to report to the director of administration, not the city engineer. And I motion we adopt as amended.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Excuse me. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, ordinance number 3-19?
So moved.
Second.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 50-03, zoning ordinance of the city of North Canton to change the zoning to Main Street District
Oh, wait, hey,
MSB.
Tim.
Beg
Do we
pardon?
want to just amend it before we read it, or?
You got to read it first.
I thought we had to read it first.
We need a vote to read it.
Yeah.
You need a vote to read it.
Yeah.
We did not do
Yeah,
that.
I didn't call that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
Let me have a motion to read by title only. First reading, ordinance number 3-2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Sorry about that, Tim.
No, no, it's fine.
All right.
Here we go. An ordinance amending ordinance number 50-03, zoning ordinance of the city of North Canton to change the zoning to the Main Street District MSB, the parcels abutting Main Street from the intersection of Ryan Street and North Main Street to the intersection of Everhard Road and South Main Street, as more fully described in chapters 1121, 1123, 1125, 1127, and 1137 of North Canton's codified ordinances, and accepting those certain parcels clearly illustrated in the zoning district map attached hereto and incorporated herein, which are not harmonious with the intent of the MSB.
Thank you. Chairwoman Keesley.
Yes, this is the Main Street Business District. I do believe we want to add the Main Street Business District to all the pieces, parts, and I'll tell you where they all are, if you're all in agreement. I mean, in parentheses, it does say MSB, which is
Main Street
Main
Business.
Street Business, right. So it'll be right there in the title. It'll again be in section 1.
I move the amendments as proposed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Those opposed? Motion carries.
And then I'd like to adopt, as amended, the first reading of the Main Street Business District, hopefully successfully this time.
Second.
All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, resolution number 2-19?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
A resolution requesting the Planning Commission consider recommending to the City Council restrictions on new gas station locations on Main Street from Hallam Street southwest to Stratavon Street northwest to maintain and promote the aesthetic features of Main Street as a core area for retail, sales, and service.
Thank you, Chairman Keesley.
Yes, I apologize, last week I believe we stopped at Orion, or 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when we were talking about the boundaries or the limits of this. And after discussion with Pat and Tim, we sort of decided Stratavon is probably a better endpoint just because of Kmart. Who knows what's gonna happen with Kmart and then that property, even though it's, marshy wetland right now, who knows what it could potentially be at some point. So I think we want to hit all the way up to Stratavon, if that's okay with everybody. And that's what we put in it. Okay. I motion we adopt to send it off to planning.
Second.
All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, may I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, ordinance number 4-19?
So moved.
Second.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city.
Hold on.
Hold on.
We could read it.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, there was a motion and a second.
Oh, there was a second? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Sorry, Tim. Taking me a while to get used to this.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton to enter into a marketing agreement with the North Canton Chamber of Commerce to have the chamber provide advertising and marketing services on behalf of the city.
All right, Chairman Keith, or Chairwoman Keith.
Yes, I request that we table this piece of legislation. After more discussions with Pat and Doug at the chamber, I think we want to sort of revamp this contract to make it more specific to what we really need. We've seen it for the first year, and we've seen what he's done and what the chamber's done for us, and now we'd like to go forward and tell him a little bit more what we want him to do. I think it sort of came from him to begin with, and now I think we want to pare it down a little bit, get some measurables in there. He's just giving reports and telling us what he's doing each month, which is great, and he's very helpful. I think at the end of next year, we're going to be able to say, hey, he did a great job and we want to keep paying him, or hey, I don't know that we really need their services anymore. So I think at this point, we're going to relook at it and go from there. I'll bring it back by committee in a couple weeks.
Okay.
If that's what, Pat, you agree?
Thank you, yes.
So you have a motion to table. I will second that motion.
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Ordinance 4-19 is tabled. All right, may I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, ordinance number 5-19.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Gonna take me a minute. Tim, thank you, go ahead.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton, upon Board of Control approval and pursuant to the Ohio Cooperative Purchase Program, to enter into an agreement with Lifeline Emergency Vehicles for the purchase of a 2018 Ford F-550 ambulance and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Thank you, Chairwoman Ware.
Okay, Laura, I'm gonna let you talk about this, but I know we're in need of a new vehicle, and we seem to always do it in the most economical way. So, seems like we're on that path again.
We are. We had the purchase of an ambulance in this year's budget. Typically, we wait till later in the year as we order one and they kind of build it to our specifications. But this year, the fire chief was able to find one that was a demo model, has very few miles, and we will still get the full warranty on that, but it'll save us about $25,000.
So we budgeted $250.
We did, so we'll come in about $225.
Okay, and this is an emergency? Okay, so I move to adopt.
Second.
Can we just take a time out just a second here?
Hold on a second. Yeah.
Time out.
Didn't we just do- I think just. I thought this was handled on the January 14th meeting.
We thought this was already taken care of because we just had Board of Control on it earlier this evening.
You would probably know.
On the 4th?
I thought on the 14th.
Yes, I was talking about, I thought I've said this before about this ambulance, but I wasn't sure if it was committee.
know.
I don't recall.
I know he was sitting here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
he
was here.
came.
That was, well, we did do both meetings that week.
I think we did both meetings
Didn't we-
because we
yeah,
needed
didn't
this.
we hang around and Dutch had to hang around so we
Yeah.
could come back and vote for it?
Forever, yeah.
Yeah, we did approve this at a previous.
Well, I have it on
reg-
committee.
Excuse me, this was approved at a special committee of the
Yeah.
whole meeting
Yeah.
on January 14th.
Didn't we have-
No intervening
We had no
Right.
council meeting.
council meeting,
Since,
there's been no action.
yeah,
Yeah, that was a special committee
I
of the
think
whole.
you're good.
yeah.
We're good. Was that before the
So we
regular
need
one?
to vote.
That was before. And we did not vote on it because
We had it,
Hold a second,
I
hold a
have it.
second, hold a second.
I have it on the special committee of the whole.
Got it on a committee of the whole, and then we had, on the 14th, we had a short item, we had one item, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was not, it was the sidewalk business,
I don't remember voting on it.
it wasn't that.
has not been voted on.
This wasn't it?
No.
It was only on
It was
committee.
a sidewalk.
Okay.
So we're good?
So,
We are
Just
good.
have to redo Board of Control.
okay, so I motion to adopt, she second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt first reading, ordinance 5-19.
All in favor, say aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Motion and a second to suspend the rules of council for 3 readings. Ordinance, I'm sorry. Motion and a second to suspend the rules of council for 3 reading. Ordinance number
So
5-19.
moved.
Second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And finally, motion and a second to adopt under suspension of the rules, ordinance number 5-19.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
And I apologize for the confusion that I may have
No
caused
worries.
the council. This was not a council issue.
Want to make sure that we're straight.
Not a problem.
Okay, reports. Deputy Director Farina.
I have no report.
All right, we're off to a good start. Engineer Graham.
Well, I'll break that good start. Some real good news, though, on the grant front. It's not quite, it's still preliminary, but final enough that I feel comfortable in telling you. Back last summer, I applied for some monies to repave North Main Street from 7th up to Orion. And we're on the verge of getting a grant fiscal '22 in the amount of $768,000.
Outstanding.
I've had a grant
Where's that
for that
again? Can you,
It's North Main Street from 7th Street, north through Apple Grove, up to Orion.
Wow.
And that area is not in the best of shape, so we'll have to hold it together through fiscal '22, which is actually late summer '21.
Nice.
But we're gonna get Apple Grove this summer with our joint Apple Grove paving project with the county engineer. So we can get that deterioration that we have right in the middle of that intersection this year.
Yeah, the intersection's really rough.
So pretty happy about it. It's one more vote, but pretty much formality.
Rob, are we using polymer on the main road this time again?
Apple Grove this year will be polymer, and this Main Street project in a couple of years, absolutely.
Okay, so that should
Part of
last.
the grant application.
Okay, great. That'll last a lot longer than the other.
outstanding. Good job, Rob.
Please, my report.
All righty.
Thank you.
Director of Administration.
No report.
All right, Finance Director.
No
Let me
report.
refer back to Pat. Can you talk about Dogwood for the?
Oh, yes, for
farm
Joe.
Oh, yeah,
house?
for
You-
Joe.
You know that project there, and is Joe still here?
Joe?
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. The Dogwood Park is undergoing a extensive rebuild renovation. It was part of our park expansion project that we pitched to the state. The state awarded us a $750,000 grant. We also received matching private donations of $250,000 from Akron Children's Hospital for a new pavilion, $250,000 from the Hoover Foundation for new playground equipment, and we received, Kathy Farina worked on another grant from ODNR for another $116,000 for new playground, $116,000 for new playground equipment as well. We're working with a design architect now. The total project cost in this is, over $1 million in that park, and we hope to break ground in the fall. But I'd love you to give us your contact information. I'd like to sit down and talk with you a little bit about the skate parks. You seem to know a lot about it, and I don't, and would appreciate some insight and maybe help in that regard. But yeah, so there's a lot that's going to be happening between, hopefully the fall of this year and as we get into the spring of next year.
And Joe, I know you came to a few Park and Rec Board meetings and was very passionate about the skateboard facility and offered your services to try to fix up some of the equipment. And it has been a long time. We're fortunate to have one in the city, as you know. And like I said, I can't believe it's been 17 years since we've done that. But yeah, so feel free to meet with our administrator. We'll review what other capital needs that you might suggest in that area. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
All right.
Okay, and.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
No report,
No
right?
report. Thank you.
No, kudos to our snow removal, our service workers, everybody pitches in, obviously, from all departments. That's why we're so good at what we do here with street and snow removal. And, it's a little aggravation, when they plow so well, you gotta dig out your aprons, but we'll take that any day of the week. That's a good problem to have here in North Canton. And I know it's tough when you get 8 to 10 inches of snow, but pass that on to the crews. Job well done. Appreciate it. And Pat,
Thank you.
You've been involved with, forming council where we're at on some things through that process. We appreciate that also. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Member Serrata?
Ditto on the street. The only other comment I wanted to make was just to note that Jack Baker had passed away. Jack was a resident in this community for a long time, but on a lot of committees, did a lot for our community. So just keep his family in your prayers. And that's it. No other report.
Thank you. Member Revolt?
I'd like to take an opportunity to respond to Mr. Osborne's comments. First of all, I think the Main Street Business District does have value. The fact of the matter is that one of the principal elements of it is the relaxation of parking. This last week, I had an opportunity to go up to Acme, North Main Street, and it has acres and acres and acres of asphalt and nary a car. Our goal, as we look at economic development, should be to put one job on every 100 square feet of usable real estate here in this community. It's a great goal. It's tough to get to. But the reality is tonight, when council recommended to the Planning Commission look at prohibiting gas stations, that's really what's behind it. Is there a better, higher economic use for scarce real estate on Main Street? I think lots can be consolidated. I don't think there's any mystery about that. And the fact of the matter is we do have a CIC account that has a substantial sum, but I think we all need to understand that that account is not easily recharged. So once it's spent, for the longer term, it's probably gone. I, for one, look at a couple properties on Main Street that I'd like to acquire with that money if I had the chance and redevelop it in a manner consistent, I think, with the sort of vision that's emerging here in the city about what we'd like for the future. So I think we have to use those CIC dollars with great care. And I would just simply say that we are aware that we have opportunities, but these large parcels, frankly, I think from a strategic sense, are the ones that we really need to be looking at down the road. So as we talk about, kind of the vision and value, I don't think we're out of step. We're just trying to be prudent with a very, very scarce resource that we have. With regard to Waterside, I think the big difference there is we spent a lot of money and we didn't have a project. And I think everybody is aware of that, and I'm not going to go into any other further details, but it's a cautionary experience that if we buy something, we better have a plan to have a development on that site. Enough said. Bill Knepp talked about the site. Bill, I would encourage you, I appreciate your emotion, but let's get some science. And I would challenge you to go to the library and spend some time in the documents on file that talk about that particular site that was to be donated. I think it's really important that we move that conversation, if we're going to do this, and that is going to be the location, that we have a complete and clear understanding what the science says about that location. I indicated in an earlier meeting, I have been in other public settings where emotion has ruled to the disadvantage of science, and it has not served the public very well. So, again, I think it's really important that that be done. Number two is this. I think before the city ever acquires that site as a gift, there'll be a phase one, there'll be a public conversation about it. Everybody's going to know exactly what's there and what the constraints are. And then I think we'll make a decision, again, based upon the science. That's it.
Good job, Joe. Member Keesley.
No report. All set, Derek. Thanks.
All right. Member Warren.
Yeah, thank you. It's good. And just the streets. We had neighbors call and just how appreciative they were. And if you had to dig out at the end of their driveways as well, we had a few mailboxes that were no longer mailboxes, but I have to say Mike responded so quickly and so professionally and has already handled different things. And that's all people want to know is just that things are going to get handled. So thank you to his team and make it all happen.
Thank you. Darrell, you're right on with what you said. The safety service building, obviously it'd be great to be on Main, but when you look at what the future development will be, Main will be the prime real estate, so we're right off of Main with the direct access to Main. So from an economic development standpoint, this is the right thing. And what Chuck said is true. I mean, we are looking at CIC investments as well as getting the ball rolling, and eventually the synergy will pick up when Hoover gets going, which we're working on all these things now. So I see nothing but positives in the near future. Also, I'm going to bring up the flag thing again. We talked about it the last meeting. Everybody has donation sheets, so this would be for anybody that would like to donate towards the flag fund. So far, I have $10,500 committed to the project, and I'm starting to get the checks in. And as soon as we get enough money, we're going to order some flags. And I just need to continue whoever wants to donate. Any denomination, it doesn't matter. So you can contact me if you'd like. The donation sheet, I gave everybody 5 of them. So please reach out to your friends, see who wants to help out. It'll look great during the 5 holidays. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. Okay, final call to council for new business. And then we will go over the meeting schedule, and Mr. Tripp was correct. We will not be meeting on the 18th, President's Day. Government offices will be closed. So that meeting will not be occurring. Next Monday, February 11th, is committee meeting, February 4th. Doug and I will not be here.
Is there much on the agenda?
We got 2 items on the agenda.
There's 4 items that the administration will, at the minimum, need to bring forward, but I have 6 scheduled.
Okay.
Committee meeting, committee chair can run the meeting.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah. We just need 4 to bring them out of committee. What's that? They better be good. Yeah, they better be. Okay, at this time, that concludes our legislative slate for the folks in the audience. We will be adjourning to executive session. So with that being said, may I have a motion and a second to enter an executive session to consider employment and compensation of a city employee.
Motion.
Second.
Member Foltz?
Yes.
Member Peters?
Yes.
Member Warren?
Yes.
Member Fonte?
Yes.
Member Soretta?
Yes.
Member Revolt?
Yes.
Member Kiesling?
Yes.
7-0, Mr. President.
All right, we're adjourned in executive session.
Same place?
Yeah, back here. returned from executive session. No action was taken. May I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Wait, hold on. Do I need a roll call to adjourn out of exec?
No, sir.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.